Hey guys, today I just wanted to create a simple video outlining my map system. Quite novel, and I made it myself. It's pretty simple but does get somewhat complicated. But I noticed some tutorials on maps are often mini maps, and they aren't really maps that you can like use throughout scenes, such as like a Resident Evil map where you can kind of see all areas you've been, or a BioShock map, or whatever. So I thought this would be better, especially for like an open world map maybe. I already tried to record this video once, but I messed up the audio. That's besides the point. So I'm just going to load in here and do a quick demonstration. Disregard the game, because today we're just focusing on the map system. So I click in, and it opens the map. You can see it load for a second, and click in, and automatically you can kind of see the whole area of the map. There's text that outlines what each room is. You know, there's little details that's painted on. This X is a placeholder for my player. It represents where the player is in the world space. And X probably isn't the best symbol for it, but it's there nonetheless. As I walk towards this item, you can see it's a hunting rifle, and if I open the map, you can see, oh, now it appears there. And this is handled through the item on map code, where basically it disables its draw and start, so it cannot be seen by the map, right? I'm using an update interval system to save some tiny amounts of performance. It's not really necessary, but I do it just for future proofing reasons. So this updates between a half second and a full second. About every half a second, it says, hey, can this object cast a ray to the player? As in, can this object see the player? And vice versa. And if it can see the player, then it said, well, now you're good to draw on the map. And this, of course, is saved by my save system. That's a discussion for a different video. So that gets saved, and then you can see now that's on the minimap. And if I were to grab the rifle, now it's gone because I've grabbed it. You wouldn't want to display something like an item that's already been taken. I'm gonna test this out again. So I just made contact with that rifle, and you can see it draws a ray to it. Okay, now I'm gonna load another scene, and you can see that when I load this scene and open my map and switch to it, it now displays both, and I can change them interchangeably, right? Pretty robust, pretty easy. Now I'm going to go over how this works. How this works is I basically have a painted overlay over each level. Made with a tile map and 3D text, so this is physical text that's technically in the scene. Although the way I have it set up is that if the player were somehow to reach out of bounds, they wouldn't be able to see this. This is only seen by a single camera. If I navigate to this camera real quick, this camera is actually off. This camera only gets rendered for one single frame. And that camera then takes a photo or screenshot of this whole level, and then it takes an image of these items as they draw on the map, if they do draw. And then that camera draws to a render texture. And this render texture is then looked at and then changed to a texture 2D. Well, why is it changed to a texture 2D? Well, I have the minimap displayed on the UI, like, so that the player can see it. And for some reason in Unity, you cannot assign render textures to a raw 2D image or any image. Okay, so I actually lied. You can assign a render texture to a raw image like you see here. But there was some reason I wanted to go with a slightly different approach. I think for saving reasons, although I'm not entirely sure why I did it in retrospect. But basically, I take that render texture, and I then convert it into a texture 2D. And this texture 2D gets then turned into a string, which then gets saved. And that's what allows me to reload it whenever I open, you know, another scene or want to look at the map while I'm in another scene, you know, and cycle through each map. The issue with these texture 2Ds is that it's all stored in memory. And since I'm using like a string, that means it is like uncompressed, completely uncompressed. Having one of these images in memory, that's fine. Having a few, that's fine. But having like more than a few, that gets really bad and will cause like huge memory problems. So you have to destroy this. So here I'm creating a temporary texture called texture try or text try 5. And I'm destroying it by the end of this function, right? Because I would never want a temporary texture to be used a frame longer than it needs to be, right? And if I go to scene linked map here, which this is like each individual, I guess, layer or level of each map. So this is like each level has its own map, and this is kind of how it's handled level by level. You know, each time you want to load a certain level or look at the map for a certain level, it refers to this. So it updates the map, and it basically reloads it reloads the data and it reloads the image. Now for this one, the map does need to stay in memory. Every time this object is disabled, which is every time the player isn't looking at it, it instantly destroys the texture, which means hopefully that there's not a single moment where one of these textures is in memory when it doesn't need to be, which means it is supposed to be working at 100% efficiency with no like leaked memory of any kind. Keep in mind, I'm not an expert. I don't really know how memory works or how memory management works, but I do know that when I see a problem, I need to solve it, and that was one of the problems I was running into. And you can see this here when I load this, right, and I load back to it, click back to it, it turns white for a second. That is because that is the texture leaving memory and then coming back into memory. That is the second that that image gets destroyed in code. And when I click back, that is it getting reloaded. This white screen shows that that minimap is being destroyed, when it's supposed to be, right? Because you do not want an uncompressed image in memory. Because an uncompressed image is not like a couple megs. That can be like dozens and dozens of megabytes, if not hundreds. I have no idea the exact number, but whatever it is, it cannot be good. So one of the biggest issues is that this player icon, no matter what scene I'm in, it'll still be present in all minimap levels because that is what appeared last time that the image got saved, which means this will need to be rendered after the fact. It'll need to be rendered on top of the image, not embedded into the image, which is actually pretty easy to do. Now the hard part will be with quest objectives, which I want to be working side by side with the map system, where hopefully I could like go into my quest system. There would be a button that says show this on minimap, and it would open the correct minimap tab and take me straight to that objective. Now to load objectives across all maps, even ones that I'm not present in, I can't reload the maps and add it on, right? So I need to find a way to add that in post, like on top of each map, which doesn't sound like the hardest thing to do, but will definitely take time. Now the other biggest problem with this system is that this minimap texture has a resolution of 1920 by 1080. Any higher would probably just get too taxing on memory, even if only one is present in the scene, right? So that means there's a max size my level minimaps can be physically, right? Because if I have a super wide minimap, then it starts to shrink all that down into a simple 1920 by 1080 image. If we use the Unity zooming, we can see this text is a little pixelated. Now this text is a little small, right? I could make this text bigger, but this text is getting small, right? So realistically, I couldn't have a minimap say double this size. See, like double this size would probably be like the hard limit, right? I couldn't have a minimap twice the size of this level, which is kind of a shame because this level's not that large. So I'm going to need to fix this problem with the size constraint because I don't know what I'm going to do about it. Well, if you guys have any ideas on how to fix that, then, I'd be happy to hear. And if you guys want me to make a tutorial like actually showing how to replicate this system, let me know. Otherwise, this was just kind of a novelty, system I made that I just thought was cool to show off. Maybe give people some ideas for their own systems or whatnot. And yeah, that's all I have to say.